You can't evolve and please people at the same time. Let those words soak into the marrow of your bones, because until they do, you will remain shackled. Not in chains you can see, but in obligations you never signed. You will walk through life with your crown tilted towards the ground, apologizing for breathing too loudly, shrinking to fit into rooms built for lesser versions of yourself. You will betray your soul for smiles that vanish when you're no longer convenient. You will neuter your vision to soothe the fears of those who never dared to dream. Because pleasing people is not a virtue, it's a quiet funeral for your potential. And no one will weep at that grave except the future you buried to make others comfortable. Evolution is war. Not a war of violence, but a war of separation. You will have to walk alone through deserts of misunderstanding, through silence that feels like abandonment, through eyes that once loved you, but now only squint with confusion. Not because you've become evil, but because you've become different. And difference frightens the masses. Always has. Prometheus was punished not for his arrogance, but for giving fire to mankind. Socrates was executed not for deceit, but for awakening minds from slumber. Christ was crucified not for wrongdoing, but for embodying a truth that shook the temples of the old world. You want to evolve? Then understand this. You must choose between your soul and their comfort. You can't be both obedient and awakened. You can't be both popular and profound. You can't be both palatable and powerful. And yet, so many of us die in the prison of performance. We become shapeshifters mimicking the language, beliefs, and posture of whoever's watching. We forget who we are in the process of making everyone else feel better, until one day you look in the mirror and see a ghost staring back, smiling politely, numb, pretty, dead. That's the cost of people-pleasing. It robs you of your authenticity, which is the very fuel of transformation. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But that privilege comes with a toll. The moment you start living aligned with your inner truth, the world will resist. The moment you say no without an apology, yes without permission, I am without shame, the masks will fall. People will recoil, misunderstand, disappear. Let them. Evolution doesn't ask for validation. It demands sacrifice. And one of the first sacrifices is approval. Your need to be liked is your leash. Your hunger for applause is their control. And every time you choose ease over essence, you sell a piece of your destiny for scraps of praise. Do you want a life that's celebrated or a life that's true? The world has never been changed by someone who asked for permission. Not once. Not in history. Not in mythology. Not in revolution. Gandhi didn't send out surveys. Malcolm X didn't water down truth for comfort. Maya Angelou didn't consult critics before speaking fire into the page. These beings were flames. They weren't safe. They weren't palatable. But they were necessary. And so are you. But not the you that's always agreeable. Not the you that's digestible. Not the you that's enslaved to expectation. I'm speaking to the you that's wild, that's ancient, that's sovereign. The part of you that remembers who you were before they told you who to be. The part that longs for liberation, not likes. For soul, not applause. That's the version of you that must rise now. And to rise, you must confront the sickness of syphoria, this spiritual schizophrenia of trying to be two people at once. The self you are, and the self they expect. Syphoria is a slow death. It eats your vitality. It dulls your vision. You smile with your face, but cry in your bones. And it all stems from one lie, that you must earn your right to exist by being pleasing. Burn that lie. You do not exist to decorate someone else's comfort zone. You are not here to be consumed, digested, and discarded by the machinery of mediocrity. You are here to shatter illusions, to challenge the narratives, to be so fully yourself that it inspires others to shed their own masks. And yes, that journey will feel like betrayal at first, because the first time you stop pleasing others, they will call you selfish. The first time you say no without explaining, they will call you rude. The first time you follow your own rhythm, they will call you arrogant. But those who benefit from your compliance will always label your awakening as rebellion. Wear that label like armor, because you are not here to be soft-spoken in a world that screams lies. You are not here to be agreeable in the face of mediocrity. You are not here to perform, you are here to transform. And transformation is messy, it is disruptive, it is lonely, but it is also holy. It is also necessary. The caterpillar does not become the butterfly by consensus. It dissolves, alone, in darkness. It breaks down into formlessness before wings ever emerge. That's what evolution feels like. Not applause, not acceptance, but dissolution. You must let your old self rot, the self that lived for likes, the self that feared rejection, the self that kept shrinking just to be held. Let it die, and from that decay, rise with clarity, with ferocity, with sacred indifference to what they think. This is the mind of the evolved, unbothered, yet focused, alone, yet overflowing, unapologetic, yet profoundly rooted in love. Not the sugary love that seeks approval, the kind of love that tells the truth even when it stings, the kind of love that cuts through illusion like a sword, the kind of love that frees you even if it offends everyone else in the process. That love begins with you. You cannot evolve while being addicted to being liked. You cannot become who you're meant to be while constantly scanning the room for permission. And the moment you realize that, you become dangerous, unstoppable, free. Because now, no one controls your value. No one dictates your worth. No one puppeteers your actions with guilt or approval or shame. You walk through the world within a thunder, calm, clear, certain. And when they try to pull you back with their disappointment, their confusion, their passive aggression, you smile, not with arrogance, but with grace. Because you finally understand. You weren't meant to fit in, you were meant to wake up. And the awakened soul does not beg. It builds, it speaks, it leads, and above all, it remembers you can't evolve and please people at the same time. And yet, most will still try. They will cling to the fantasy that they can grow without offending, lead without challenging, shine without casting shadows. But evolution is not diplomatic, it is brutal in its honesty. It cuts away everything that is not aligned. It does not consult your comfort. It does not ask who might be hurt when you finally choose yourself. You want peace? Then stop pacifying. The path to inner stillness is not paved with avoidance, it's carved through confrontation. And the first confrontation is always internal. That ache in your chest isn't anxiety, it's your authenticity begging to be let out. That resentment you feel towards others isn't proof of their cruelty, it's evidence of your silence. You weren't betrayed by them. You betrayed yourself by staying silent when your soul was screaming. People didn't walk over you, you lay down. You weren't taken for granted, you offered yourself on the altar of acceptance, hoping someone would call you enough. But they never will. Because people-pleasing is a hunger that feeds itself. The more approval you get, the more afraid you become of losing it. You become a slave to perception, a mirror, not a man, a reaction, not a revolution. And there is no freedom in that, only performance, only paralysis. So if you're going to walk the path of real growth, the kind that bends reality, breaks generational chains, and births legacies, you must stop negotiating with your own power. You must stop being emotionally available to people who are energetically invested in your smallness. You must learn the divine art of indifference, not apathy, but spiritual detachment, the ability to love without clinging, to give without craving, to speak without performing. And that begins the moment you stop being afraid to disappoint others. Disappointment is the evidence of boundaries. It is the sound of false control breaking. When someone says, "You've changed," say thank you. Because change is the highest compliment you'll ever receive from someone who wanted you stagnant. They will call your evolution betrayal, because your growth reveals their stasis. They will shame your independence, because your freedom exposes their cages. But your job is not to shrink yourself to protect their illusions. Your job is to embody your truth so fiercely that it becomes impossible to lie to yourself again. You want to know what real power is? It's walking into a room full of people who still expect the old you and not shrinking to fit their memory. It's knowing you are misunderstood and choosing to stay silent rather than over-explain. It's knowing that some people will never celebrate your awakening because they only loved you when you were asleep. That's the price. And that's the price. To be free from the need to be liked is to be free from the need to be controlled. This is where your clarity begins. Not when everyone agrees with you, but when you stop caring if they do. Clarity doesn't come from noise, it comes from solitude, from sitting in the heat of your own becoming without reaching for someone else's fan, from standing in the fire long enough that your old self burns away and your new self emerges, not to be accepted, but to be whole. And that wholeness, it terrifies people, because most have built their lives on fragments, on masks, on approval. You show up as your full self, and suddenly their performance feels hollow. Your authenticity becomes a mirror, and most cannot look into it without flinching. But that is not your burden to carry. Let them flinch. Let them walk. Let them misunderstand. The price of evolution is misunderstanding. The reward is liberation. Because when you stop living for others, you start living with yourself. You hear your voice again. You remember your rhythm. You feel your blood thicken with purpose. And the world may not clap, but your soul will sing. That is the sound of alignment. That is the sound of freedom. And once you taste it, once you stand in the center of your own storm with unshakable presence, you'll wonder how you ever tolerated being liked more than being real. You'll look back at your people-pleasing past with compassion, but not regret, because you'll understand that version of you was trying to survive. But now, you're here to thrive. You're here to be unfiltered, unfolded, unapologetically whole. Because evolution doesn't happen in silence. It happens when you stop editing yourself to be digestible, when you speak without flinching, when you act without checking if it will make them uncomfortable. Growth begins where approval ends. And once you cross that threshold once, you bury the need to be accepted. Everything changes. Your relationships deepen or disappear, both of which are sacred. Your vision sharpens, your energy returns. Your steps become heavy with direction. And your spirit, untamed, untouched, unshaken, no longer afraid of who leaves, no longer bending for crumbs of affection. You risen not in arrogance, but in alignment, because you finally see the truth. You were never too much. They were simply too committed to their version of you. Let them go. You are not here to be explained. You are not here to be liked. You are here to wake the hell up. And when you down, you truly don't know, one will recognize you. Good. That means you finally become who you were always meant to be. They will say you've changed, but they won't say what they truly mean. What they mean is you no longer submit. You no longer dull your flame so they can avoid their own shadows. You no longer speak in a way that makes their mediocrity feel safe. You no longer wear the costume that kept their illusions intact. And that's terrifying for them, because Your evolution forces a question they've spent years avoiding. What if I'm still asleep? This is why the awakened are so often attacked, not because they are wrong, but because they are mirrors. And people do not hate the mirror, they hate what it shows them. But you must not dim yourself to preserve their comfort. If your light makes them squint, let them look away, because your life is not a stage for their applause, it is a battlefield for your soul. And in this war, comfort is the enemy. Familiarity is the trap. Pleasing others is the quicksand that keeps you from climbing. You see, most people don't fear failure. They fear disapproval. They fear being abandoned when they stop being convenient. They fear becoming the villain in someone else's story because they chose to be the hero in their own. But listen closely. You must be willing to be the villain in someone else's myth if you're ever going to be the legend in your own. You are not here to be easy to digest. You are not here to smooth over your edges so the fragile can sit next to you without confronting their own dullness. Your presence should ignite something, awaken something, disturb something. Because growth is not polite, it does not knock. It breaks down the door of your conditioning. It enters like a storm and throws your false self to the floor. And when the dust settles, you find clarity, not because it was given, but because it was claimed. In the silence after the storm, you finally hear it, your own voice, raw, honest, undeniable. This voice has been there the whole time, buried under layers of obedience, drowned beneath the noise of validation, choked by the expectations you never agreed to. But now it's rising, and it will not be silenced again. Because now you understand, every time you silenced that voice, you betrayed something ancient within you. Every smile that wasn't real. Every yes that meant no. Every time you bit your tongue to protect someone's ego. Those weren't just social sacrifices. They were wounds. And your soul remembers every one. But no more. Now is the time to reclaim the sacred rage that lives beneath your people-pleasing. Yes, rage. Not the rage of destruction, but the rage of resurrection. The rage that says, I will not shrink anymore. The rage that tears off the mask and says, this is who I am. If that's too much, then go. Because your truth is not negotiable. Your essence is not on trial. And your evolution does not need a witness to be valid. You were never meant to explain your transformation. A snake does not announce it will shed its skin. A phoenix does not apologize for the fire. And you wild, sovereign, luminous being are, under no obligation to make your rebirth comfortable for others. This is the era of your becoming. And becoming is violent to everything that isn't aligned. It will cost you friendships that were based on a version of you that no longer exists. It will cost you the love of those who only loved your silence. It will cost you the approval of crowds who preferred your obedience over your authenticity. But what you gain? You gain yourself, fully, fiercely, finally. And there is no currency on earth more valuable than that. No applause that compares. No relationship that replaces it. Because when you stop needing permission, everything becomes clear. You stop asking if you're too intense and realize the world needs your fire. You stop wondering if you're too blunt and realize truth was never meant to be soft. You stop tiptoeing around egos and start walking boldly in purpose. And in that clarity, something strange happens. You no longer chase, not love, not approval, not understanding. You become the mountain still, vast, unmoved. And those meant for your path will rise to meet you. The rest will fall away. Let them. They were never meant to walk the entire road with you. They were teachers, lessons, echoes of an old self that you've outgrown. Mourn them, if you must, but do not return, because nothing back there is worth the price of your awakening. You don't owe them your silence. You don't owe them your smallness. You don't owe them your backward steps to make them feel tall. You only owe one thing to the sacred within you, to stand fully in your becoming, unbending, unbothered, unapologetic. This is the power of choosing evolution over approval. And when you do, you finally realize something most never dare to see. You were never meant to be liked by everyone. You were meant to be remembered by the right ones. And that only happens when you stop performing and start being. So here we are, no longer whispering, no longer asking, no longer pretending. You've seen it now, the cost of shrinking, the ache of silence, the slow erosion of soul in the name of being nice. You've lived that chapter, and now you stand at the edge of something irreversible. This is your threshold. Not the kind marked by celebration or ceremony, but the silent inner threshold where you leave behind everything that was borrowed, forced, and inherited, the false identities, the masks, the addiction to being liked. And here, in this sacred rupture, a truth stands taller than all the lies you were fed. You were never here to please them. You were never here to be soft-spoken in the face of madness. You were never here to bend, fold, and disappear so others could feel tall. You were never here to earn your belonging by editing your soul. You were here to become, to rise, to reclaim, to evolve into such terrifying clarity that your very presence rearranges the room. That's the power you've been taught to fear. That's the strength they tried to guilt out of you. But it's yours. It always was. And now you take it back. Not with noise. Not with revenge, with stillness, with vision, with unshakable allegiance to your inner fire. From this moment forward, you do not beg for seats at tables you were meant to flip. You do not wait for green lights in rooms built to cage your voice. You do not dilute yourself to be digestible. You lead, you speak, you stand. Because the world does not change when you are liked. It changes when you are free. Free from the need to make them comfortable. Free from the lie that you must be smaller to be loved. Free from the prison of pleasing people who were never rooting for your evolution. And once you taste that freedom, even for a second, you will never betray yourself again. You will never flinch when someone doesn't understand. You will never soften your truth just to be invited. Because the truth is this: you are not here to be remembered for how polite you were. You are here to be revered for how real you became. So rise, fully, fiercely. Let your silence offend. Let your voice liberate. Let your presence remind the world what it looks like when a soul refuses to apologize for being whole. Because in the end, the most dangerous thing you can ever be is exactly who you are. Unedited, unmasked, unstoppable. You can't evolve and please people at the same time. So choose. And when you do, choose you.